Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he watched the mining equipment dig deeper into the rocky surface of Kepler 442c. 3 years had passed since he and his team arrived at this distant world, and the work never got easier. The planet sat at the edge of human space, far from Earth and far from help. New Haven Station was their home now, a collection of metal buildings and tunnels carved into the mountain where they lived and worked. The morning started like any other morning. Lisa Campbell sat in her laboratory, studying the strange energy readings that kept appearing on her screens. She was the smartest person on the station, always looking at data that nobody else understood. For weeks now, something had been bothering her about the signals coming from the nearby star systems. They were too regular, too organized to be natural. She made notes in her computer and planned to send a report to Earth with the next supply ship. Tony Rodriguez checked the communication equipment in his small control room. Every day he sent messages back to Earth, letting them know that everything was normal at New Haven Station. The messages took 3 weeks to reach home, traveling through space at the speed of light. Today he had reports from the mining teams, weather data from the planet, and a birthday message from Paul Walker to his sister back on Earth. Normal stuff that kept the connection alive between this distant world and humanity. Amy Foster walked through the station's corridors, checking on the defensive systems that protected them. The weapons were old and not very powerful, designed more for asteroid defense than real fighting. Nobody expected trouble out here. The galaxy seemed empty and peaceful. The worst problems they faced were equipment breakdowns and the occasional meteor shower. She looked at the radar screens that watched the space around their planet, seeing nothing but empty darkness and distant stars. Dr. Rachel Stone finished her morning medical checks on the station crew. 47 people lived and worked at New Haven Station, and keeping them healthy was her job. The work was hard and the environment was tough, but the people were strong. Most of them were volunteers who wanted to be part of humanity's expansion into the galaxy. They believed they were building something important, creating the first step toward a bigger human presence among the stars. Kevin Hughes and Paul Walker worked together in the engineering section, maintaining the fusion reactor that powered the station. The reactor was reliable but old, requiring constant attention to keep running smoothly. They talked about their families back on Earth while they worked, sharing stories and memories that helped pass the time. Hughes had a wife and 2 children waiting for him. Walker was engaged to be married when his tour of duty ended in 18 months. The attack came without warning. Lisa Campbell was the first to see them on her sensors, 3 large ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel near the planet. The ships were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built, and they moved with purpose toward New Haven Station. She called Amy Foster immediately, her voice shaking as she reported what she was seeing. Foster ran to the command center, activating the station's alert systems as alarms began to sound throughout the complex. The alien ships were beautiful and terrible at the same time. Their hulls were smooth and dark, covered with glowing lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. They moved through space like predators, silent and deadly. Tony Rodriguez tried to send a distress signal to Earth, but the aliens jammed all communications before he could complete the transmission. The only message that got through was an automated emergency beacon that would take weeks to reach home. The first attack destroyed the station's main power grid. Beams of pure energy lanced down from the alien ships, melting metal and vaporizing everything they touched. The mining equipment exploded in balls of fire, sending shock waves through the ground that shook the entire complex. Emergency power kicked in, giving them lights and life support. But the main defensive systems went dark. Amy Foster tried to coordinate a defense from the command bunker deep underground. The station's few weapons fired back at the alien ships, but their shots bounced harmlessly off energy shields that surrounded the attackers. She called for volunteers to man the remaining gun positions, knowing it was hopeless but refusing to give up. Jake Morrison led a team to the surface, trying to repair the damaged systems while energy beams cut through the air around them. The aliens showed no interest in communication or negotiation. They fired on anything that moved, destroying buildings and equipment with methodical precision. Their weapons were beyond anything humans had imagined, turning solid metal into glowing vapor in seconds. The station's defenses crumbled under the assault as one by one the gun positions fell silent. Tony Rodriguez stayed at his post in the communications room, trying desperately to get a message to Earth. The aliens had damaged most of his equipment, but he managed to jury-rig a transmitter using spare parts. With energy beams cutting through the walls around him, he recorded a final message and loaded it into an emergency probe. His hands shook as he entered the launch codes, knowing this might be humanity's only warning about the threat that was coming. The probe launched just as the communications room exploded around him. Tony Rodriguez died with his finger still on the transmission button, but his message was already racing toward Earth at faster than light speed. The probe carried video of the attack, sensor data about the alien ships, and his final words warning Earth about what was coming. It would take 3 weeks to reach home, but the message would get through. Dr. Rachel Stone worked frantically to save the wounded in the station's medical bay. The aliens' weapons caused terrible injuries, burns that went deeper than anything she had seen before. She did what she could with limited supplies and failing equipment, but too many people were beyond help. Paul Walker died in her arms, his body burned by alien energy. Kevin Hughes never made it to the medical bay, killed instantly when the engineering section took a direct hit. The end came 6 hours after the attack began. Amy Foster and the surviving defenders made their last stand in the command bunker, fighting until their ammunition ran out and their weapons fell silent. The aliens showed no mercy, firing through the bunker's armor until nothing remained alive inside. Jake Morrison was the last to die, standing guard over the evacuation tunnel that never got used because there was nowhere to run. New Haven Station burned for 3 days before the fires finally went out. The alien ships departed as quickly as they had arrived, leaving behind only twisted metal and cooling ash. 47 human beings had lived and worked on this distant world, and now 47 human beings were dead. The first contact between humanity and alien intelligence had ended in massacre, and Earth did not even know it had happened yet. The emergency probe from New Haven Station arrived at Earth on a Tuesday morning, when most people were still drinking their coffee and reading the news. The automated systems at the Deep Space Communications Center detected the probe's signal and pulled it into a receiving bay where technicians began downloading its data. What they found changed everything humanity thought it knew about its place in the universe. Admiral Christopher Blake was eating lunch in his office at the Pentagon when the call came through. The voice on the other end was shaking with excitement and fear as the technician explained what they had discovered. Blake dropped his sandwich and ran to his car, driving through Washington traffic faster than he had ever driven before. 20 minutes later, he stood in a secure briefing room, watching the final transmission from Tony Rodriguez play on a wall screen. The video showed alien ships destroying human buildings with weapons that turned metal into vapor. It showed people running and dying as energy beams cut through the air around them. It showed the end of New Haven Station and the deaths of 47 innocent people who had been trying to build a better future for humanity. Blake watched the recording 3 times before he could speak, and when he finally opened his mouth, only one word came out. President Margaret Collins received the briefing at 4 in the afternoon. She sat in the Oval Office with her senior advisors, watching the same terrible video that Blake had seen hours earlier. The room was completely silent except for the sound of alien weapons destroying human lives. When the recording ended, Collins looked around the table at the shocked faces of her cabinet members and asked a simple question that nobody could answer. Dr. Nathan Price was the world's leading expert on the possibility of alien life, but he had never imagined anything like what he saw in the probe's data. The aliens had technology far beyond anything humans possessed, ships that could travel faster than light and weapons that could destroy cities. Their attack on New Haven Station showed no mercy and no interest in communication. They were predators, and humanity had just become their prey. The Global Defense Council met in emergency session that same evening. Military leaders from every nation on Earth gathered in a secure facility beneath Geneva, their faces grim as they studied the intelligence from the destroyed Outpost. General Robert Taylor, head of the Earth Defense Force, presented the facts in a cold, professional voice that could not hide his anger. Humanity was at war whether it wanted to be or not. The aliens called themselves the Zephyrian Empire, according to the probe's translation systems. They had been expanding through the galaxy for hundreds of years, conquering worlds and enslaving populations wherever they went. Their military controlled 17 star systems and commanded over 3,000 warships. They had never met organized resistance because they had never fought anyone who could fight back. The Zephyrians were reptilian creatures that had evolved from apex predators on a world called Zephyr Prime. Their society was built on the idea that the strong should rule the weak, and they saw other species as either useful slaves or obstacles to be removed. They had destroyed dozens of civilizations during their expansion, and they expected humans to be just another easy conquest. Earth's leaders made their decision quickly. President Collins addressed the world that night, telling 8 billion people that humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and that the first aliens they had met were enemies who wanted to destroy them. She declared a state of emergency and announced that every nation on Earth would work together to build a military force capable of defending human space. The shipyards around Earth began working around the clock, building warships designed specifically to fight the Zephyrian threat. The ships had names that reflected humanity's determination to survive: the USS Vengeance, the HMS Retribution, the USCS Justice, and dozens of others. Each vessel carried the most advanced weapons humans could build, including quantum torpedoes and plasma beam arrays that could punch through alien armor. Captain Daniel Murphy was chosen to command the flagship of Earth's new war fleet. The USS Retribution was the largest and most powerful ship humans had ever constructed, a kilometer-long dreadnought armed with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Murphy had served in 3 different navies during his career, but he had never commanded anything like this. His crew included the best officers Earth could provide, men and women who had volunteered to carry humanity's revenge into the darkness between the stars. Lieutenant Susan Gray became the ship's tactical officer, responsible for targeting the weapons that would strike back at the aliens. Commander Tim Anderson took charge of the engineering department, maintaining the fusion reactors and faster-than-light engines that would carry the fleet to enemy territory. Lieutenant Alex Johnson handled navigation, plotting courses through star systems that no human had ever seen. Dr. Carol Martinez joined the crew as intelligence specialist, studying everything known about Zephyrian technology and tactics. She worked 18 hours a day, analyzing the data from New Haven Station and trying to find weaknesses in the alien military. Her reports painted a grim picture of the enemy they faced, but she also found reasons for hope. The Zephyrians had grown overconfident during their long expansion, and overconfidence could be exploited. The fleet that assembled around Earth was impressive by human standards but tiny compared to the Zephyrian armadas. 27 ships carried humanity's anger toward an enemy that controlled thousands of vessels. The odds were impossible, but Earth's leaders had decided that some things were worth fighting for regardless of the odds. The aliens had murdered 47 humans in cold blood, and they would learn that such actions had consequences. Admiral Blake gave Captain Murphy his final orders in a private meeting at the Pentagon. The official mission was to locate the Zephyrian Empire and attempt diplomatic contact, but Blake's real instructions were written in the margins of the paperwork where no politician would ever see them. Murphy read those handwritten words and nodded grimly, understanding exactly what Earth expected him to do. The war fleet departed on a cold morning in March, leaving Earth's gravity well for the last time. Captain Murphy stood on the bridge of the USS Retribution, watching his home planet shrink to a blue dot behind them. Around him, his crew prepared for a journey that would take them 200 light-years from home, into the heart of an enemy empire that had never known defeat. The voyage to Zephyrian space would take 4 months, during which the human ships remained hidden using experimental stealth technology. They traveled through empty systems and avoided the trade routes where alien patrols might detect them. The crew used the time to train for the battles ahead, knowing that their first engagement with the enemy would determine whether humanity survived or joined the long list of species that the Zephyrians had destroyed. The human fleet traveled through empty space for 4 months without being detected by Zephyrian patrols. Captain Murphy spent most of his time on the bridge of the USS Retribution, studying star maps and intelligence reports about their enemy. The Zephyrian Empire controlled a vast region of space, with their homeworld protected by massive fleets and orbital defense platforms that could destroy entire armadas. Getting close enough to strike back would require careful planning and perfect timing. Dr. Carol Martinez worked day and night in her intelligence center, analyzing every piece of data they had about Zephyrian military tactics. She discovered that the aliens had conquered so many worlds that they had become lazy and overconfident. Their patrol schedules were predictable, their communication codes were simple, and their commanders expected easy victories against primitive opponents. This arrogance would become their weakness. The first contact with enemy forces came near a star system called Altair 7th, where a Zephyrian patrol of 3 ships was checking cargo vessels for smugglers. Lieutenant Commander Steve Brooks led a reconnaissance mission with 2 small human ships, staying hidden behind an asteroid field while they observed the alien patrol. The Zephyrians moved slowly and carelessly, never suspecting that their hunters had become the hunted. Brooks waited until the patrol ships separated before striking. His 2 vessels emerged from the asteroid field like ghosts, their weapons firing before the aliens knew they were under attack. The first Zephyrian ship exploded in a ball of fire and gas, its crew never understanding what had killed them. The second ship tried to flee, but was destroyed by quantum torpedoes that tore through its hull like paper. The third ship managed to send a distress signal before Brooks silenced it forever. The attack lasted only 6 minutes, but it provided valuable intelligence about Zephyrian ship design and weapon systems. The aliens used energy shields that could stop most projectiles, but the shields had weak points that could be exploited by precise targeting. Their hulls were strong but not as advanced as the humans had feared. Most importantly, their crews panicked when faced with unexpected resistance. Commander Helen Wright analyzed the tactical data from the skirmish and developed a new strategy for fighting the Zephyrian Empire. Instead of attacking their heavily defended core systems directly, the human fleet would strike at outlying colonies and supply bases, drawing enemy ships away from their strongholds. Each attack would be swift and devastating, leaving no survivors to report what kind of enemy they faced. The plan was brutal but necessary. The Zephyrians had shown no mercy to the humans at New Haven Station, killing 47 innocent people without warning or negotiation. Earth's fleet would respond with the same cold efficiency, teaching the aliens that every human life had a price that would be paid in alien blood. The first major strike came at a mining colony in the Deneb system, where 1,000 Zephyrian civilians and soldiers worked extracting rare metals from a dead world. Captain Lisa Thompson led a squadron of destroyers through the system's outer edge, approaching the colony from the direction of the local sun to mask their heat signatures. The Zephyrians detected them only minutes before the attack began. Thompson's ships struck without warning, their weapons reducing the colony's defensive installations to molten slag in the first volley. The Zephyrian garrison tried to organize a counterattack, but their ships were destroyed before they could clear the planet's atmosphere. Civilian transports attempting to flee were hunted down and eliminated with methodical precision. The attack lasted 37 minutes, and when it ended, nothing remained alive on the colony world. News of the Deneb attack spread through Zephyrian space like wildfire. For the first time in their expansion, the reptilian conquerors faced an enemy that showed them no mercy and asked for no quarter. Colonial governors demanded protection from their fleet commanders, while military leaders tried to understand what kind of opponent they were fighting. The humans had appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly, leaving only death behind. Admiral Varthak commanded the Zephyrian Third Fleet, 200 warships based near the Empire's border regions. He received orders to hunt down the mysterious attackers and destroy them before they could strike again. Varthak was a veteran of dozens of conquests, a skilled commander who had never met defeat in battle. He dispatched patrol groups throughout his territory, confident that superior numbers would overwhelm whatever primitive force dared to challenge the Empire. The human fleet struck again before Varthak could organize his search. Captain Eric Davis led an assault on a fortress world called Rigel 4, where the Zephyrians had enslaved 3 different alien species to work in their factories. The attack began with orbital bombardment that destroyed the planet's defensive satellites, followed by landing troops who liberated the slave camps and freed thousands of prisoners. The liberated aliens told stories of Zephyrian cruelty that made the humans understand they were fighting true monsters. Entire populations had been enslaved or exterminated during the Empire's expansion, with billions of sentient beings murdered for the crime of existing in the wrong place. The freed slaves begged to join the human fleet, offering their ships and their lives to help destroy their former masters. Dr. Jennifer Clark worked aboard the science vessel USS Discovery, studying captured Zephyrian technology and trying to locate their homeworld. She made a breakthrough when she decoded the navigation systems from a destroyed enemy ship, revealing the location of Zephyr Prime, and the quantum frequencies used by their planetary defense grid. This information would allow the human fleet to penetrate the most heavily defended system in the galaxy. The war escalated as human strike forces carved a path of destruction through Zephyrian territory. Colonies burned, supply convoys disappeared, and entire patrol fleets vanished without trace. The aliens began to understand that they faced an enemy unlike any they had encountered before, one that fought with the cold fury of a species defending its own survival. Emperor Thakvar ruled the Zephyrian Empire from his palace on Zephyr Prime, a massive world orbited by defense stations and protected by the Imperial Grand Fleet. He received reports of the human attacks with growing alarm. Realizing that his empire faced its first real threat in centuries, the Emperor ordered the mobilization of every available warship, pulling vessels from conquered worlds across the galaxy to defend the homeworld. Over 800 Zephyrian warships converged on Zephyr Prime, creating the largest defensive armada in galactic history. The Emperor was confident that no force could penetrate such defenses, but he had never faced humans before. He had never encountered a species that would burn down the galaxy to protect its people, and he was about to learn the price of that ignorance. The human fleet had grown larger as more liberated worlds joined their cause. Captain Murphy now commanded nearly 100 ships, including vessels from 3 different alien species that the Zephyrians had enslaved. The freed aliens brought valuable intelligence about enemy defenses and a burning hatred for their former masters that matched humanity's own desire for revenge. Together they formed an alliance built on shared pain and the promise of justice. Dr. Jennifer Clark completed her analysis of the captured Zephyrian navigation data, revealing not only the location of their homeworld, but also detailed information about the planetary defense systems protecting it. Zephyr Prime sat at the center of a fortress system, surrounded by orbital battle stations and protected by quantum shields that could deflect most weapons. The planet itself housed 5 billion Zephyrians, including their emperor and the high command that directed their military operations. Captain Eric Davis had become a legend among the liberated worlds after his assault on Rigel IV. The freed slaves called him the Ghost Captain because his ships appeared without warning and vanished before enemy reinforcements could arrive. His latest mission took him to the industrial world of Vega Prime, where Zephyrian factories produced the weapons and ships that maintained their empire. The attack would be the largest operation yet attempted by the human. Fleet Admiral Varthak finally encountered the human forces when Davis struck at Vega Prime. The Zephyrian commander arrived, with 50 warships just as the human assault began, thinking he had trapped the mysterious raiders at last. Instead, he found himself facing an enemy that fought with tactics and technology he had never seen before. The battle lasted 4 hours and ended with the complete destruction of Varthak's fleet and the liberation of another enslaved world. Commander Helen Wright studied the tactical reports from each engagement, learning how to exploit Zephyrian weaknesses while minimizing human losses. The aliens were excellent fighters when they had overwhelming advantages, but they panicked when faced with unexpected situations. Their commanders followed rigid battle plans that could not adapt to changing circumstances. Most importantly, they had never learned to fight as underdogs because they had always been the strongest force in any conflict. The war reached a turning point when Emperor Thakvar realized that his empire faced complete destruction unless he could stop the human advance. Intelligence reports described an enemy that seemed to appear from nowhere, strike with devastating effectiveness, and disappear before counterattacks could be organized. Worse still, the humans were liberating enslaved populations and turning them into allies, creating a growing coalition that threatened the very foundation of Zephyrian power. Captain Murphy received new orders from Admiral Blake via quantum communication, transmitted across the vast distance between Earth and enemy territory. The message was brief but clear. The human government had decided that negotiation with the Zephyrians was impossible. The aliens had proven themselves to be genocidal monsters who would never stop expanding and killing. Earth's final solution was simple and absolute: end them. Dr. Clark made another breakthrough when she discovered the quantum resonance frequency of Zephyr Prime's star. Every star had a unique frequency pattern that could be disrupted under the right circumstances, causing the fusion reactions at its core to become unstable. The science was theoretical and had never been tested, but it offered a way to strike at the heart of the Zephyrian Empire with devastating finality. Commander Roy Phillips led the team that designed humanity's ultimate weapon. The Stellar Disruption device was a quantum resonance projector that could destabilize a star's fusion core, causing it to expand rapidly and explode as a supernova. The weapon required enormous amounts of power and had to be delivered directly to the target star, making it essentially a suicide mission for whoever carried it. Phillips volunteered to lead that mission himself. The human fleet began its final approach to Zephyr Prime, traveling through hyperspace along routes that Dr. Clark had mapped using captured enemy navigation data. They emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, where long-range sensors immediately detected the massive Zephyrian defense fleet waiting for them. Over 800 enemy warships formed defensive lines around their homeworld. Supported by orbital battle stations and planetary shield generators, Captain Murphy stood on the bridge of the USS Retribution, studying the tactical display that showed the enemy forces arrayed against them. The odds were impossible by any reasonable calculation, but reason had nothing to do with what they were about to attempt. This was about justice for 47 murdered humans and freedom for all the species that the Zephyrians had enslaved. Sometimes the right cause was worth fighting for regardless of the odds. The Zephyrian Emperor broadcast a message to the approaching human fleet, offering to negotiate a ceasefire if they would withdraw from his territory. Thakvar promised to respect human space and leave Earth alone if Murphy would call off his attack. The Emperor's words were smooth and reasonable, but they came too late. The time for negotiation had ended when the first human died at New Haven Station. Murphy's response was broadcast on all Zephyrian communication frequencies, ensuring that every ship and station in the system could hear his words. His voice was calm and cold as he delivered humanity's final judgment on the Zephyrian Empire. The aliens had chosen to be predators when they could have been neighbors. They had murdered innocent people when they could have made peaceful contact. Now they would face the consequences of those choices. The human fleet advanced toward the enemy defensive lines while Commander Phillips and his volunteer crew departed in a specially modified ship carrying the Stellar Disruption device. Their mission was to reach Zephyr Prime's star and deploy the weapon before the defensive fleet could stop them. Phillips knew he would not survive the mission, but he also knew that his sacrifice would end the threat that the Zephyrians posed to humanity and all free species. The space around Zephyr Prime prepared for the largest battle in galactic history. Human ships armed with quantum weapons faced Zephyrian vessels equipped with plasma cannons and energy shields. Liberated alien allies flew alongside Earth's finest warships, united in their determination to end an empire built on conquest and slavery. The battle would determine whether freedom or tyranny ruled the galaxy, and both sides understood that only one could survive. Captain Murphy gave the order to attack as the human fleet crossed into weapons range of the Zephyrian defensive perimeter. The war that had begun with the massacre of a small mining outpost was about to climax with the destruction of an entire star system. Justice for New Haven Station was finally at hand. The Battle of Zephyr Prime began when the first human torpedoes struck the outer ring of Zephyrian defense stations. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as orbital platforms that had protected the homeworld for centuries were reduced to burning debris in minutes. Captain Murphy watched from the bridge of the USS Retribution as his fleet carved through enemy lines with weapons that the aliens had never seen before. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos led the fighter, squadrons that broke through the Zephyrian perimeter defenses. Her small ships moved like angry wasps through the massive enemy formation, targeting shield generators and weapon systems with surgical precision. The Zephyrian fighters tried to intercept them, but were outmaneuvered by pilots who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Santos herself destroyed 6 enemy vessels before her squadron reached the inner defensive ring. Captain Frank Miller commanded the heavy cruisers that engaged the main Zephyrian battle line. His ships were outnumbered 3-1, but they carried quantum weapons that could penetrate alien armor like it was made of paper. The USS Democracy and HMS Freedom fought side by side, their guns firing continuously as they pushed deeper into enemy territory. Miller's voice remained calm on the communication channels as he directed his ships through the chaos of battle. The Zephyrians fought with the desperate fury of a species facing extinction. Their plasma cannons filled space with deadly energy, destroying human ships that got too close to their defensive formations. Admiral Kextar led the Imperial Guard from his flagship, a massive dreadnought that had never known defeat in over 100 battles. He directed his forces with skill and determination, but he was fighting an enemy that had nothing left to lose. Dr. Sandra Mitchell monitored the battle from her station aboard the USS Retribution, tracking the progress of Commander Phillips and his suicide mission to the system's star. The stellar disruption device had to reach its target and be properly deployed, or the entire human fleet would be destroyed by overwhelming enemy numbers. Phillips had volunteered for certain death to give his species a chance at victory, and Mitchell prayed that his sacrifice would not be in vain. The space around Zephyr Prime became a graveyard of burning ships and expanding debris fields. Human vessels exploded under concentrated alien fire, while Zephyrian warships were torn apart by quantum torpedoes and plasma beams. Both fleets fought without mercy, knowing that the survival of their entire species depended on the outcome of this single battle. The liberated aliens flew their ships into Zephyrian formations like guided missiles, using their vessels as weapons when their guns ran out of ammunition. Captain Murphy led the USS Retribution toward the center of the enemy formation, targeting the Zephyrian command ship, where Emperor Thakvar was directing the defense. The massive human dreadnought pushed through waves of enemy fire, its armor taking hit after hit while its weapons returned death for death. Murphy's crew worked with mechanical precision, loading weapons and repairing damage while the ship shook under constant bombardment. Commander Gary Thompson guided his small vessel toward Zephyr Prime's star, carrying the device that would end the war in a flash of nuclear fire. Enemy fighters pursued him through the inner system, their weapons trying to destroy the ship before it could complete its mission. Thompson's crew fought back with everything they had, knowing that failure meant the destruction of the human fleet and the eventual conquest of Earth itself. The stellar disruption device was deployed in the star's outer corona after Thompson's ship fought its way through the final layer of defenders. The quantum resonance projector began its work immediately, sending invisible waves of energy into the star's core that disrupted the delicate balance of fusion reactions. Thompson and his crew had just enough time to send a final message to the fleet before their ship was vaporized by the star's increasing radiation. Dr. Mitchell detected the first signs of stellar instability on her instruments, massive fluctuations in the star's energy output that indicated the weapon was working. She announced the news to Captain Murphy, who immediately ordered all human ships to begin emergency withdrawal from the system. The star was going to explode, and they had only minutes to reach minimum safe distance before the shockwave arrived. The Zephyrians realized what was happening when their own sensors detected the star's instability. Emperor Thakvar ordered his fleet to pursue the retreating humans, but it was already too late. The star's outer layers began to expand as the fusion core lost control, sending waves of radiation across the system that disabled ships and burned through armor plating. Panic spread through the Zephyrian ranks as they understood that their homeworld was doomed. Zephyr Prime's star exploded with the force of 1 billion hydrogen bombs, its light visible across half the galaxy. The supernova erupted in a sphere of nuclear fire that consumed everything within 3 light hours of its center. The Zephyrian homeworld was vaporized instantly along with its 5 billion inhabitants, while the orbital defense stations and the Imperial Grand Fleet were swept away like leaves in a hurricane. Captain Murphy watched the expanding nova from the bridge of the USS Retribution, his ship safely beyond the reach of the stellar explosion. Around him, the surviving crew members worked in silence, processing the magnitude of what they had accomplished. 47 human lives had been avenged with the complete extinction of the species that had murdered them. The message had been sent across the galaxy that humanity would not tolerate attacks on its people. The shockwave from the supernova destroyed every artificial object in the Zephyr system, while the expanding sphere of plasma and radiation raced outward at nearly the speed of light. Scattered Zephyrian fleets in distant systems found themselves leaderless and cut off from their command structure. Some fought to the death against human forces. Others surrendered, and many fled to the Galactic Rim, where they became pirates and raiders instead of conquerors. The Zephyrian Empire that had dominated 17 star systems for 3 centuries ceased to exist in the span of 18 hours. Their military was shattered, their leadership was dead, and their homeworld was nothing but expanding gas and cooling plasma. The liberated world celebrated their freedom, while other alien species took careful note of humanity's capacity for both mercy and terrible vengeance. The human fleet began its long journey home to Earth, carrying news of their complete victory over an enemy that had seemed invincible. Captain Murphy stood on his bridge, watching the nova that had once been Zephyr Prime grow smaller behind them. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy as a power that would protect its own people and defend its allies with absolute determination. The universe would never forget the lesson written in starfire and alien blood.